Hey, it's Dr. Charles, aka CoachMD. In my over 30 years of medical practice, I've made it my goal to help you create a great life by achieving a strong mind, a healthy body, and an unshakable spirit. I'm excited to share this article with you today because it says so much about language and self speak, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to others, and how that might influence our health. Because, of course, I'm talking about mind, body, and spirit, how all of them have to work together in order for us to live our best life, in order us to be connected to something greater than ourselves. And we're going to look today at this article by Maria Magdalena from the University of Miami. Can language resolve the Hispanic paradox? So, what is the Hispanic paradox? Well, the Hispanic paradox is the idea that in the Hispanic community, there tend to be people who have multiple medical uh, risk factors for diseases, more so than other populations when compared. So you would think that that would in turn make the life expectancy of those people to be less because, of course, if they have many risk factors for diseases, this may cause illness and premature death. But that's the paradox. So let's take a look at this because that's not what happens. That's the paradox. So let's look at this. In early December 2021, I was seeing a physical therapist for a shoulder injury. During one of my visits, the physical therapist was alternating between me and another patient on an adjacent bed who had a knee replacement. While the therapist worked on the other patient's leg, stretching it and bending the knee, I eavesdropped on their conversation. The patient was in pain, anxious to complete the hard part of the therapy. The therapist was encouraging him to get working. At one point, the patient expressed a desire to quit. The therapist responded, "Te queda una semanita más." This translates to, "You have a short week left." The patient agreed to continue. By adding the suffix ita to the word semana or week, the therapist offered the patient a perspective on how much therapy remained in a way that sounded shorter, even though it was still a full week. Isn't that interesting, right? This ability to minimize or exaggerate a situation by simply adding a suffix is one feature of the Spanish language that could contribute to a striking resilience in health that researchers have documented in Hispanic populations in the United States, called the Hispanic paradox. This is so interesting to me. Language having such a power over our health, mind, body, and spirit. Again, it's all integrated. Let me know what you think as I go along here. As a Hispanic quantitative psychologist, I have been involved in research on stress and cardiovascular health at the University of Miami since 1988. More recently, I joined the Hispanic Community Health Study slash the health study slash study of Latinos as an investigator. This observational study of over 16,000 adults documents the health of Hispanics of various backgrounds in 4 urban communities in the U.S., unraveling the Hispanic paradox. About 30 years ago, researchers reported that Hispanics in the United States lived longer and had lower rates of heart disease than their non-Hispanic white counterparts. This is despite having high prevalence of risk factors for heart disease, such as obesity and diabetes, and experiencing stress from discrimination and low wages. Okay, we're not going to comment on political or other social commentaries, be that as it may. Heart disease killed 696,962 persons in the United States last year. That the causes involve interactions between genetics and environmental factors, such as smoking, leading a sedentary lifestyle, and consuming a high-fat diet. These behaviors contribute to heart disease and stroke. Stress also contributes to heart disease. How people react to the stress is important too. The extent to which our language facilitates how we process our emotions in response to stress may therefore be important in heart disease. For that reason, the Spanish language may offer an advantage. Having lived a bilingual life, I believe this to be true. I really like this. I really do. Let me know what you think. And while you're at it, subscribe so I can continue bringing you such content that's probably, I don't know if you'd see this before, but this really struck me. This seeming paradox between Hispanics' higher health risk yet lower overall rate of heart disease came to be called the Hispanic paradox. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, Hispanics lived on average 3 years longer than their white counterparts, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The cause of this resilience has been a topic of interest to researchers for decades. So, yeah, I'm going to fast forward a little bit because it's a very long article. Because I want to get to the actual language where they talk about the comparisons of language, and I'm listing this a link to this article so you can see the whole full content, the full content by just clicking on the link. So here, I came across a paper on the positivity of human language. The researchers had developed a, quote, happy index that they applied to measure the number of positive words in a variety of sources from several different languages. They analyzed books, newspapers, music lyrics, and tweets, for instance. A figure in the paper showed the distribution of the happy index across sources and languages. The result was startling. The sources with the highest happy index ratings were those in Spanish. Once I identified the Spanish language as a focus, the pieces began falling into place. Now let's look at the contribution of verbs. Take, for example, the two forms of the verb to be. In English, we simply are, but in Spanish, we can be a certain way temporarily, estar, or more permanently, ser. This comes in handy when considering negative situations. In English, I could be overweight. In Spanish, I can be permanently overweight, which translates to ser gorda, or I could be temporarily overweight, or estar gorda. The latter is transient and entertains the possibility of change, which can itself encourage motivation towards change. So think about that. We're always told not to identify ourselves. At least that's what I talk to people about. Don't say, I am a hypertensive or I am a diabetic. Once you say I am, you are. So let's look at how the Spanish language might handle such things. Spanish is one Romance language that makes use of the subjective form of verbs. The subjective expresses hypothetical situations, wishes, and possibilities. For instance, consider the magical realism of the Colombian author Gabriel Garcia Marquez. His use of the subjective facilitated the possibility of alternative realities. The Spanish language's ability to minimize and exaggerate by the simple addition of a suffix also increases the range of emotions and perceptions. This is how the therapist in the example helped his patient persevere through a difficult phase of therapy. While English is the language of science, precise and succinct, my hunch is that flowery nature of Spanish, the flowery nature of Spanish contributes. Let's start that one over. While English is the language of science, precise and succinct, my hunch is that the flowery nature of Spanish contributes to a culture that supports emotional expression. In doing so, it can help its speakers manage the responses to stress. I like this. I just want to, it's so interesting to me. See if there's any other examples in this article that she talks about here. I'm going to look into this further, and I'll share with you what I find. But I would like you to do the same also and share with me what you find. The differences, because when you declare something in yourself, right? You say I am this, or it defines permanency. I am overweight. I am obese. I am a loser, or I am stupid, or whatever. You're declaring it. The words have power, and it influences what I've called the automatic brain, which keeps us in a safe place. Even though that safe place may be miserable, it keeps us miserable because it's comfortable. But the flowery language, perhaps, in this that the Spanish language offers, may give you another perspective. There's saying "fake it till you make it." Well, it's not quite that, but if you could look at a perspective in different ways, and I'd love my Latino listeners to leave your comments on some examples of how we might say something in English and you might say it in Spanish, and how that can shape totally the situation and make it different, and cause an internal feeling that's a lot different, which translates into how our cells operate, and ultimately our overall health. So it's been great talking to you and sharing with you this article today. And until next time, I'm Dr. Charles, aka Coach MD, urging you to stay strong in mind, in body, and right here in soul. Bye for now.